A young prince in a hurry, Mohammed Bin Salman, has a vision for Saudi Arabia's future. He talks about radical change and returning his country to, quote, moderate Islam. But what exactly does he mean, and can it be achieved? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Martine Dennis. Now, in the 3 years since he emerged as a central player in Saudi Arabia's government, Mohammed bin Salman has seemed to be a young man in a hurry. The 32-year-old formally became crown prince earlier this year, but well before that, he'd announced broad plans to transform both Saudi Arabia's culture and its economy. At a conference this week in Riyadh, the prince announced plans for a new economic megacity. More on that in just a moment, but his headline-grabbing comments were about Saudi society and the need for it to change radically.
We are returning to what we were before, a country of moderate Islam that is open to all religions and to the world. 70% of Saudi people are younger than 30 years old, and honestly, we will not waste another 30 years of our lives before dealing with extremist ideas. We will not spend the next 30 years of our lives dealing with destructive ideas. We will destroy them today and immediately. We want to live a normal life, a life which includes tolerance in our religion and in our traditions, and contributes in developing our country and the world.
Well, the Crown Prince suggested his country's embrace of a particularly strict version of Islam was in reaction to Iran's 1979 revolution. Well, since his initial appointment as Deputy Crown Prince in 2015, he's often hinted at plans for sweeping social and economic reforms. Many of these were outlined in Vision 2030, a $2 trillion project that seeks to shift Saudi Arabia's dependence away from oil. This week, he announced the latest element of this, a new $50 billion megacity and a free economic zone straddling Saudi Arabia, Jordan and Egypt. So how achievable is this enormous ambition then? Let's bring in our guests. In Fort Lauderdale, Florida, via Skype, we have Saudi activist Yasmin Saib. In Kuwait City, we have Abdullah Al-Shaiji. He's a professor of political science at Kuwait University. And in London, we have Jane Kinnimont, who's deputy head and senior research fellow in the Middle East and North Africa programme at Chatham House. Welcome to you all. But Yasmin, let me start with you. What do you think then of this hugely ambitious programme that's been outlined by the Crown Prince?
I think it's phenomenal. I think the Crown Prince has really shown exceptional leadership in taking this enormous step and, making declarations, about this massive reform that has actually already started in his own country, and he wishes to, the scope and magnitude of reform that has taken place just in the last 1 year has been unprecedented in the country's modern history. And he intends to expand this reform well into the next 15 years with many programs that will essentially overhaul life in Saudi Arabia as we know it.
Abdullah, in Kuwait, part of the Crown Prince's remarks referred to Saudi Arabia reverting back to what he called a moderate form of Islam. He said that that his country's embrace of a fairly strict interpretation of Islam was a direct consequence of the 1979 Iranian Revolution. What do you think of that? Is that accurate?
Well, I mean, there is a lot of development, fast-pacing development in Saudi Arabia that is really something unheard of and unprecedented. I mean, there is a now marrying between political modernization, if it will fly, economic reforms, a mega development that is a major quantum leap if it will succeed with these huge mega cities. But also there has to be some socio-economic development that is attached to this huge ambitious plan that if it will fly, then not only Saudi Arabia, but the whole Middle East is at really a cusp of major change and development that will benefit probably the whole region. But there are formidable challenges. Before that, there is the religious establishment that has been the backbone of the Saudi political system. There has been a marriage between the Al Saud family and the religious establishment. What will happen to that a strong bond between these two elements that is like an airplane to fly the Saudi Arabia through all the ages.
Abdullah,
the challenges are enormous,
Abdullah,
but the ambition seems to be dedicated to his plan, it seems.
You make a very good point there. Let's put that to Jane. Jane, as Abdullah points out, economic transformation is the objective, but along with that has got to come social and cultural change.
That's right. And some of those changes have in fact been underway for a while. King Abdullah already took quite cautious and subtle steps to rein in the power of the clerics over the justice system in particular, and to some extent the education system. What is different now is that Mohammed Bin Salman is speeding all this up, and he's doing it explicitly, not just through words but through actions, by announcing the end to the driving ban. He's sending a very strong signal in Saudi Arabia that the traditionalist, religiously conservative camp will no longer be the driving force or indeed the constraint on policy making that it has been for years.
Yasmin, I'm just wondering what's behind this. Obviously, we understand that there are huge questions, and have been for some time, as to the sustainability of this vast economy that is totally, or has been totally, dependent upon oil. Is there new thinking? Is this young Crown Prince, a 32-year-old millennial, has he brought new thinking to the Saudi government, to the royal family, or is this just a case of needs must? They've got to do something, otherwise they're going to hit the buffers.
I definitely think it's a combination of both, but I do think we should give credit where credit is due. I think that his leadership has definitely amplified a great deal of the need that was there to break the shackles of the old ways and to diversify. You know, Saudi Arabia no longer wishes to be branded as this country that exports extremism. It no longer wishes to be branded as solely a country that's, you know, an oil exporter. It wishes to re-emphasize its role in the Muslim world as a propagate for moderate, tolerant, and open Islam. And it's taking strides to do that, and also to diversify its economy. That is why it's taking incredible measures within the country and outside, in fact, to diversify the economic, outpouring, and as well as incoming of foreign investment, and to build these magnanimous projects and connecting to Jordan and to Egypt, through that gateway of the Red Sea. I mean, these are really mega projects that I think will have tremendous impact, just as the professor said, not only for Saudi citizens, but also for the region at large.
Indeed. Abdullah, this is such an ambitious project, an ambitious vision, isn't it? So tell me, how does the current GCC crisis fit into it, where Saudi Arabia has blocked its land border with Qatar and is leading 3 other countries in its isolation, its attempt to isolate Qatar, and also about the war in Yemen? How does that fit in to Saudi Arabia's attempt to burnish its credentials, if you like, in order to attract this critical investment that it needs to achieve this 2030 vision?
Exactly. This is an excellent question, and this really hits the nail on the head. You cannot really have this huge mega project with instability, mayhem, wars, blockades, and intra-GCC fighting. There has really to be, I hope this will be a catalyst for the Saudi leadership and the 4 countries that are isolating Qatar to recalculate their calculus about how to proceed, because investors are shy when it comes to instability. Saudi Arabia is bogged down in 2.5 years of war in Yemen, and today the Crown Prince himself stated that we're going to continue the campaign in Yemen in order to prevent the Houthis from becoming another Hezbollah on our southern borders. And he belittled the crisis with Qatar, saying it has really minute and very minute impact on our investment. I mean, I think this is really a very simplistic approach. There has really to be settling down of all these crises in order for Saudi Arabia to live to its potential, as not only because this ambition is part of the Saudi Arabia. I mean, these mega projects that have been announced by the Crown Prince are very ambitious, and if they will succeed, they will really transform the whole region, not only Saudi Arabia. Mega cities, you have Neom on the borders of Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Egypt. You have a futuristic city. You have artificial intelligence. You have another Dubai with more gadgets and more opulence on the Red Sea. You have another now talking about another mega city with Amazon and Alibaba, another $500 billion. These projects really need stability, security, and confidence for investors to come in with full of confidence in order to really invest handsomely in Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia has really to sit down and really rethink the Kuwaiti proposal, the Kuwaiti mediation, and in order to reach a conclusion that will allow Saudi Arabia to focus more on its future ambitious plan and is transforming the country politically, culturally, societal. Also, you have women now will be able to drive before the end of next year, by June or July. You have opening up of the society. You have a lot of people are counting, and the Crown Prince himself is banking on the 70% of the Saudi population to embrace his ambitious plan at all levels, because they represent the majority of the Saudi society, and these are the young, and they crave all these modernity that they go and see
okay,
in
Abdallah.
neighboring countries.
You make
and
another.
This is very important to succeed. You need stability in order for these huge plans to really fly.
You make another very good point indeed. So, Jane, how critical is it that Saudi Arabia gets on this path to modernity, if you like, that it gets on this path to transformation, given that it's got vast reserves, a $600 billion reserve? I mean, could it sit comfortably for a little bit longer? Or is this actually the point of an existential point, if you like, by which Saudi Arabia has got to redress itself and prepare for the future, or sink or fail?
Before the fiscal reform started, Saudi Arabia was burning through those reserves at an astonishing rate. You know, the figure that you quote is less than a year of Saudi GDP. So when they look at having fiscal deficits in the region of 15 or even 20% of GDP, then your reserves could easily run out, you know, within 5 years' time. Of course, they have other options. They can borrow internationally and so forth. But the point is that the old oil-fueled model of growth is not sustainable, even if oil prices were to rebound to $100 a barrel. Previously, during the last oil boom, growth was sustained in Saudi Arabia by having double-digit growth in government spending every single year, and that just isn't feasible anymore. So the country does need to diversify. It's already begun to diversify. Most people don't think it will meet the very ambitious targets that are laid out in Vision 2030, but even Saudi officials don't pretend that those are absolutely real guidelines. They tend to say privately, even if we get to 60%, 70%, 50% of those targets, we're still doing pretty well. I think the key test at home for Mohammed Bin Salman will be whether this plan does manage to create jobs. There will be some interest in privatizations, in buying Saudi bonds and things like that, but will international investors come and invest in sectors that will create jobs for Saudi nationals? That is ultimately the key thing that his domestic popularity will hinge on.
And Yasmin, yeah, we've been alluding to this youth bulge. haven't we? The young people of Saudi Arabia amount to what, more than 60% of the total population. More and more people in Saudi Arabia are coming out of universities and colleges with degrees, and this is by and large quite a wealthy sector of the population, isn't it? They've got expectations. So these jobs job creation perhaps is the most important task for MBS, as he's rather affectionately known by many people.
Absolutely. I mean, 70% of the Saudi Arabian population is under the age of 30. And so the country definitely has to gear itself for that. That is why the Crown Prince has repeatedly made commitments to engage in rigorous youth development programs to prepare them for the job force, and not just that, to expand the country's economic opportunities so that there is greater jobs. He wants to expand Aramco, he wants to expand the military, he wants to expand Saudi corporations so that they also have a share in the global marketplace. So there's a lot of activity happening that I believe will definitely benefit youth employment, and have them have a voice in our world.
And Abdullah, in Saudi Arabia, change is often portrayed as coming very, very slowly indeed. Is there a danger, perhaps, that the Crown Prince is moving too fast? Is there a danger that tradition and modernity are on a collision course in modern-day Saudi Arabia?
There is a fear of that because, modernity comes with moderation in a conservative society that has for too long stuck to its old conservative traditions, and you cannot just bring them in and just let them loose. I mean, there has to be a gradual approach. But I think there is also ambition and there is also craving for change, because Saudis have been cultured, have been traveling the world, and have seen, even in the neighboring countries like in Qatar or in Dubai or in Kuwait, the way the culture here is totally different than in Saudi Arabia. No cinema, women don't drive. So they have been accustomed to living when they travel to Europe or the States for their summer vacations, and they would love to. Most of them probably, there are no surveys, but most of them probably would love to see that in their own countries. So it's not like Saudi Arabia is isolated away from the rest of the world, but it needs a lot of time because there are diehard conservatives in Saudi Arabia that frown at all these changes that are taking place, and they think that it's moving Saudi Arabia too fast for their own taste. Because of that, we have to be really cautious about how far Saudi Arabia could go, and if that would impede rather than expedite the ambitious plans of a prince that seems to be in a hurry to achieve all these mega projects and plans. And we wish all the best for Saudi Arabia, because really Saudi Arabia is the engine of the whole Arab world. It has the largest GDP. It is the #1 oil producer. And if it will really be successful in transforming and diversifying its income away from oil, that has been the staple for the last 80 years or so, then the other countries in the GCC would really use Saudi Arabia as a harbinger to try to implement such prototype in our own society, because even in Kuwait and even in other GCC countries, there have been talks about diversifying the economy for the last 30 years, but we have not really succeeded in doing so. So because of that, Saudi Arabia has to be very careful to instill confidence in the investors' eyes and believes that these mega projects that have been announced...
All right, OK, Abdullah, we come back to that point again.
To build confidence.
You're absolutely right. So coming to you, Jane, then. Now, Mohammed bin Salman, this young Crown Prince who rather controversially took the post, moving aside his uncle to take this position. He's depicted in some parts of the world as being a bellicose hothead who is rather aggressive and doesn't take the time to think things through. Is this the man, therefore, that is likely to be successful in attracting all this investment, this foreign investment that is absolutely critical to this project?
Saudi Arabia has been struggling to attract significant inward investment in the last couple of years for two reasons. One is that investors still largely judge the strength of the economy on the oil price and government spending, which have both been low. And secondly, investors are still trying to assess political risk, particularly what risks there are to Mohammed bin Salman inside the Al Saud family, which of course is something that really no outsiders know. So a lot of firms are playing wait and see. They're expressing interest, they're visiting, they're checking out the possibilities, but they want to see who else goes in first and how successful they are before they make a move. There have been a number of major companies in the US and elsewhere who've signed memorandums of understanding to invest, but most of them are still thinking through how much money they will actually commit to the kingdom at this time.
And Yasmin, is Mohammed bin Salman out on his own? Is this a one-man project, or does he have significant support from within the ruling family of Saudi Arabia?
No, I definitely believe that he has rallied a great deal of leadership within Saudi Arabia to support him on all levels of society. But I do like to point out a comment in response to what the Professor Abdullah said. I think that while it may be perceived that he is in a rush, for a very long time, Saudi Arabia has always been accused of taking measures towards reform quite slowly, and they have always been, blamed for that. Now that you have a young leader who is actually coming out and is very aggressive and is putting, money where his mouth is, and is actually taking actual actions, not just playing lip service, I think it would be a disservice to say, well, now he's actually rushing it. I think that it is very timely, all of these reforms that are happening, and it is for sure for the betterment of everybody involved.
Okay, yes,
within Saudi society.
Yasmin,
for the youth,
can I
for
just
the Arab region,
can I just interrupt and ask you what you think is the overall impact of Saudi Arabia's continuing war in neighbouring Yemen, and indeed its blockading, or it's leading the efforts to blockade Qatar? I mean, what are these aggressive actions? What are they doing to the drive, if you like, to bring in this foreign investment and to transform the way in which Saudi Arabia is viewed?
Honestly, I don't think I'm the most qualified person to answer that question, but because they're political in nature, and that's not my expertise. But I would say that obviously, political tensions is not good for anybody. It's not good for Saudi Arabia, and I really do hope that they will be able to resolve them, and through diplomacy, through mediation, and be able to move on, because I think that united, they can go a lot further.
All right, very quickly, Jane, can I put that final point to you and ask you very quickly if you would respond to that and answer how far you think that these exploits of the Saudi government are denting this attempt to rebrand the country?
They have, for two reasons. Firstly, on Yemen, there are the reputational problems because of Saudi Arabia's association with the bombing campaign, and humanitarian problems in Yemen. So say here in the UK, where there's a lot of governmental support for Saudi Arabia, we see a growing campaign for an arms embargo to an extent there's never been in the past. Secondly, they raise some concerns about Saudi's strategy, because in both cases, Saudi Arabia has launched campaigns that make a big impact, but seems to be suffering from the lack of an exit strategy. So people are asking, how are these things going to end? How will Mohammed bin Salman finish both of these crises?
Thank you all very much indeed. We're now out of time, but that was a really interesting conversation. Thank you so much indeed, Yasmin Saib, Abdallah Al-Shaiji and Jane Kinnimont. Thank you all very much. And as ever, thank you for watching the programme. You can see it again anytime you like by going to the website, aljazeera.com. If you want more discussion, you can go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And there's always a conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. But from me, Martine Dennis, and the whole team here in Doha, it's goodbye for now.